concerning. Kenyans are saying there are major issues that we need to be looking at as a country, and not just the impeachment against or of the Deputy President, Rigathi Gachagua. The question is this just a political witch hunt, or even so, is it then a done deal for Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, despite all the processes as envisaged in the Constitution? That's a question we are asking. Why now for the NCIC to speak when Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua had even earlier on hinted and compared the country to a company spoken on shareholding? Did the NCIC speak then? Are the questions that are now coming up. But remember, even despite the protests, the ODM leader, or you would say former, for some, Raila Odinga, now backs the Ruto-Adani deal. Where are we at? I want to listen to this bite from the Member of Parliament, Kimani Ichung'wah, creating some assurance that there is absolutely no political witch hunt in as far as Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua's motion is concerned. But is it? Let's take a look.
We are not settling any political scores. What we are doing is holding people to account. We are holding people accountable. Part of the reason why President William Ruto did ask both the National Assembly and Senate or Parliament to amend even our standing orders to bring cabinet secretaries to answer to questions and statements from the public through their elected representatives was to hold cabinet secretaries and everybody in cabinet accountable. You have seen an impeachment motion against a cabinet secretary, and you saw how it went. You have now seen an impeachment motion against the Deputy President. You've seen how it went in the National Assembly. And you will see in both instances the merits of each case and the issues that were looked into before the vote. Therefore, impeachment is a process provided for in our Constitution to ensure that there is accountability in government. And that, as I've said, it is accountability from the bottom to the top or from the bottom downwards. From the President, Deputy President, Cabinet Secretaries, all the way to officers like my DCC here.
All right. Thank you very much for staying with us, our panelists tonight, and of course, Professor Kagwanja, Alenga, and Kathy. And let me start with Alenga. You know, he seems to be speaking your language, Kimani Ichung'wah, saying it's not a matter of tribal lines. This is, not a personal matter, but we're looking at one person, and we're invoking Article 6 about accountability, and it's bottom up, besides the economic model. Kila mtu, down, up, accountability.
Yes, indeed. I strongly agree with the sentiments from the MP for Kikuyu.
Yes.
Yeah. I am looking at it from a positivist point of view, that we have had certain acts in the Constitution that are problematic in terms of implementation. And when it comes to the implementation, we need to make a national sacrifice. Take, for instance, the article on integrity. For us to deny someone to vie because they have integrity issues means we have to burst out of a certain balloon to make that decision, that critical decision. But all the time we fall for, if we make this person accountable, this particular community is going to react in this direction. So then that keeps stopping us from making considerable steps in actualizing the Constitution. So then now at this time, we are confronted with an opportunity to actualize Article 150 of the Constitution. So our resolve in actualizing that, balancing it with tribal card, then that will enable us to make a critical decision that defines the maturity of our democracy. And if this process terminates at its logical conclusion, then we will have crossed the Rubicon River. And that means, going forward, everybody will know that certain things are possible. They can actually happen. You can be accountable for certain things in this country. And more fundamentally is what does it portend for the future? Because we are where we are, our politics are the way they are, because everyone knows that there is no consequence for bad behavior in our politics. Every time you come to the point where you have to pay responsibility for what you have spoken as a leader, what you have done as a leader, you fall back to your community and you start telling us it is us being sacrificed. It is us being put on the spot. But then, can we lose these leaders the same way we lose them as a community so that they can go and serve the nation? Is the same way we should lose them when it comes for their time to be accountable for their actions in public office.
All right.
And this does not stop with Kenya alone. We understand the critical place that Kenya occupies in regional politics. And anything happening here has a tendency to be extrapolated to other East African countries. How will we enable countries like Uganda to trust that they could actually recall an errant public servant? How would we strengthen democracies in neighboring countries when they understand that Kenya has gone before us, they have actualized this in their constitution? As tough as it is an imperative for this moment.
All right, I want to hear from Professor, but somebody's asking, who are you referring to as boys and girls before stating your conversation? It is very clear. Kenya's, we talk about cultivating certain culture and behaviors. All these things, including bribery and corruption, are instilled in young children in as low as primary school. So when you say boys and girls, please wake up your younger children if they're not going to school so they can be part of this conversation.
Very true.
Professor, we're looking at, candidates being fronted, favorites who are now being looked at as replacements. So the question was, is this a done deal? And is it too early then to say who's coming in?
2 points. First, I think what is happening is it should be looked at positively.
All right.
At least that's what our neighbors are looking at it. That Kenyans are doing, what other regional systems or democracies cannot do or have not even dreamt of doing. I know my colleagues in Somalia and others are watching, and this is a very big moment for Kenya. For Ugandans, the same, and so on. So let's keep that in mind, that it's not a do or die business. It is us experimenting parts of our constitution. Now, it would be worse if this kind of vendetta or kind of animosity that we have seen had no vent or way of venting it. Thanks God, we have a constitution and a very clearly laid out way of dealing with this matter. I'm saying this to make the next point. And the next point is that let's not cheat ourselves. This is an intensely political process. If I may ask, why was it impossible to impeach Gachagua before the broad-based government was formed? So Gachagua is the first victim of broad-based government. Why? Because a consensus was built in which he's not part of, and which he seems to be at odds with. And therefore, since he had not prepared himself for the fight, he finds himself outgunned, outnumbered, and out there. So it's a political process. Let's not cheat ourselves. And when we get to Senate, look at the numbers. ODM plus UDA, what does that mean? It meant they had 200 votes, which were assured. So they had to copy the others from the minority parties, and they got the 282. Now, as we head to Senate, the two formations have 82% of the command. They don't need anybody else to make this decision. So whether you're talking about a legal process, this is not a legal process. It cannot be a legal process. It's a political process. Why? Because the big boys in politics have agreed that Gachagua must go. And Gachagua himself knows he's going because the numbers are not adding up. Not only at the national level. Look at the Mount Kenya East, which we call Meru, Tharaka, Nithi, and Embu. The total number of votes, how many in Meru and Tharaka Nithi? The total 14 members of parliament, including those who are nominated, voted 100% against him.
In favor of the motion.
In my home, where Gachagua is our in-law, we decided only 2 people voted against him. Only 2.
All right.
The rest voted. So this is a political process. Is it okay that we line up there is a lineup to succeed him? Yes, because when the tree is falling, you know, you make your decision. Are you going to have timber, or are you going to have firewood, or what kind of things are you going? It's good to think forward. But the decision as to who will become next is upon the head of ODM and the head of UDA.
Come again, Professor.
The decision as to who become the successor to Gachagua falls in the hands of the leader of ODM and the leader of UDA, because they are the ones who are partners in this business.
Let me come back to you.
Yes.
Kathy.
That's quite interesting. He says they are partners in this business. But talking of numbers, just like my senior professor, whom I respect very much, has said, this is how I look at it. Look, Gachagua was impeached by 282 members of parliament. And when we talk about Mulima, which is actually very fond of mentioning, it is about 40 members of parliament from Mulima, all of them, whether Nyeri, Nyandarua, you know, Kirinyaga, and all those places. Even if these members of parliament did not vote to impeach Gachagua, Gachagua was already impeached, because 281 minus 40, or even 41, then they had already met the threshold, because they just needed 233 members of parliament to actually impeach him. But then I think we need to get to a point where we see ourselves as Kenyans and stop talking about regions, because I think one of the things that has happened right now is this Mulima business, that Mulima business. I come from Mulima myself, and I'm actually proud to come from that region. But it is very important when someone is holding a national position, like the one that is being held by His Excellency Gachagua, to realize that you're not a regional leader, but a national leader. And we need to start looking ourselves as Kenyans, as opposed to you're either a Kikuyu, a Luya, a Luo. Of course, identity is important, but I think we need to give more emphasis on ourselves as Kenyans and embracing each other and understanding, because I think that is where all these problems started from.
All right?
Yes.
Alenga, we're looking at the two functions on Sunday. President William Ruto, his silence, and this is according to, of course, my team, your closing remarks. He skipped the Embu service. The question is it on purpose? But of course, there were two different entities, Deputy President in Embu, President Ruto in Nairobi. What do you make of that? I mean, with your lens.
I think it's normal. It's normal when you are not in very good times with your spouse. You might not go with them to church. So perhaps when they are going to church, you will choose to sleep or go somewhere else. So it goes without saying. I think right now where we are, it's quite evident that there's no relationship between Gachagua and his boss. And that is the biggest realization that he should have by now. His last hope is the court, but as it were, in legalese we say de minimis non curat lex. Of small things the law knows no cure. So I don't think there's really much redress for him in terms of seeking intervention of the courts to make a spouse love you again, you know. It's quite difficult.
So according to you, these are done deal?
For me, I would just sum up in the words of Butler, William Butler. He says, turning and tining in the widening gyre, the falcon cannot hear the falconer, the center cannot hold, and things fall apart.
Professor, what would be your closing remarks to this matter?
My closing remark is that Gachagua's journey is not over yet. He still have a chance.
Okay.
If I were him, and if I was advising him, I would tell him not to allow Senate to humiliate him.
Does he have a choice?
Yeah, he can resign.
Okay.
He can resign and then declare that he's a candidate in 2027 as a presidential candidate. What are they going to do to him? And he starts his campaign that day. So there is no Senate, there is no impeachment, there is only a candidate. Now, if he goes the whole hog, what does that mean? He'll be impeached, he cannot even be a chair of a cattle dip.
So there we go. He's saying he should do it with dignity and then declare himself for 2027. Quite interesting. Kathy?
Yeah, yes, that is the same sentiments that I would have. But having known the person of Gachagua, Gachagua is not going to resign, because I do not think he actually told us on national TV that those friends of his who are taking some, I think he called them silly messages, and he said he's not going to listen. So he might not listen. But then it's just to remind our people, just like I had said earlier, that we are one nation, one people, and we need to live as sisters and brothers, and we need to start seeing ourselves as Kenyan. And just maybe to remind the people of Mount Kenya that it is time for us to have a proper political party that can take us to the next level. Thank you.
A proper political party, yes. Not just a political party.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Kathy Irungu, political analyst, for creating time to be here tonight. Professor Peter Kagwanja, CEO, Africa Policy Institute, for creating time. Alenga Toristad, who is a policy and governance analyst, for also creating time to be here. You reminded me of a song, I think, is it by Bob Marley or Lucky Dube? One love, let's get together and feel alright. All right, I quickly want to take feedback on our, of course, BQ of the day tonight, and let me just quickly bring up that BQ for you. It is in as far as the NCIC remarks are concerned. Has the NCIC done enough to promote cohesion in the country? Olga Innocent from Egerton University, saying, if Gachagua is tribal by talking Mount Kenya region, what about Mr. President, not tribal by nominating all PSS and directors of parastatals being Kalenjin? So who is tribal here? There was a question here to the panelists, of course, talking about the topic. Samuel Onunda saying, let's be respectful, truthful, courageous, and polite. Okay. Let me see. Okay, now they are different, but of course there are a number of these feedbacks just saying the NCIC is inactive. It's interesting. Some Kenyans are saying NCIC is not even active to start with. All right, thank you for sending in your feedback. Let's take a look at the front page of the Bold newspaper tomorrow. Grab a copy. Race against time. Impeachment. Deputy President is a man under siege, and with each clock chime, the news tightens, with options running out. His replacement is imminent, even as he stares at a life out of public office. Is he negotiating a way out? Are the courts going to put asunder what the politicians have crafted? Who will take the hot seat if Rigathi Gachagua packs his bags? All right, let's take a look at also the Arab that saw Kericho Governor walk free will be on page 4 of the Standard tomorrow, and Ruth starts reveal jaw-dropping run on the national page 48, that is on Matter Sports. So do grab a copy for yourself tomorrow and understand the details of what is happening in the country. The big conversation is on the Deputy President impeachment now with the Senate. Is it with the courts? Is it with the Senate? Will he resign? Thank you for watching. My name is Anki Doris Umbat. Stay woke. Good night.